Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of JDM Masters, and today we are at STI Gallery in Mitaka. So this is the STI's official kind of a showroom museum, and we're going to go inside later, and they have a fantastic display of their classic and latest up-to-date rally cars and Nurburgring cars. And this is actually located above the Subaru dealership. I think it's one of the biggest dealerships in Tokyo, if not Japan. And the other nice thing is that it's located next to the Subaru Tokyo regional office, which also houses STI's test facilities right over there. If you guys want to come here, the closest station is Shinkogane, and you can probably take a bus. For those of you who rent a car, you can check on the website for the directions to get here. And so when you arrive here, you can see a whole variety of the new cars and the dealership below. You can buy some products, and also the gallery is open on weekdays from 9:30 to 5 p.m. And so you can come up here and do your own self-tour, and there's lots of things to see. So the word Subaru actually is a Japanese translation of the Pleiades star constellation, which is supposed to have 7 stars, but one of them is invisible. Therefore, only 6 are actually reflected on the logo of the company. The Subaru also is very iconic in Japanese culture. There's an anime that's of the same name. And another point that's interesting is that it's not the name of the company. The original company name is Fuji Heavy Industries. As we've explained in our Impreza video before, that they are also into aerospace. They still make planes, and back in the World War, they were actually a rival of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and that rivalry just continued all the way into the WRC of the 90s and now. But Subaru has now changed their name company to this name. It's no longer Fuji Heavy Industries. All right, so let's go in and check out all of these cars that are inside, and it's a great place for any STI or Subaru fan. So now just coming inside and just greeted this really airy open space, the lighting on each car. I'm just gonna put this borrowed umbrella back into the STI Bilstein suspension holder. And these colors, you can see, it's equipped on a lot of their cars. Classic dark pink springs, which is going to explain why STI chose this color in a bit, and the yellow shock dampers. So let's look at what STI as a company really is. Simply as a motorsports and tuning arm for Subaru to participate in motorsports, mainly the World Rally Championship. And I'm sitting in a booth inside the gallery, which has a display of their corporate colors. Now it's pink. Pink has a relation to perhaps the Sakura, which is also a kind of a samurai related kind of a macho manly color, quite different from what pink means in the West. But nevertheless, pink was chosen as a symbol of the samurai culture, and pink is the light pink, which they started off here in 1998 and 89. And as it says here, so the STI logo was designed according to the company's president, Ryuichiro Kuze, such that it would resemble a racetrack with the route cut out of the letters. So you can see here, it kind of resembles a racetrack. Now, a little point about the small I. It says here, a lowercase I was used as a nod to fuel injection technology, which was something that was innovative back in the 80s. So a lot of the early STI version cars have the I in smaller case, and I think after they graduated to the uppercase in 2005, somewhere around there, with the later version model. You can see here how the corporate colors have progressed into something darker and darker, and onto the current generation kind of almost maroon sort of shade. I really like how they've placed the logo inside this grid line, kind of like how it would appear on a cutting board or something in Illustrator. So let's go and have a look at some of the iconic display cars in the gallery. Now, truly, this gallery is very well designed. There's a lot of open space, and you can see all of their classic rally cars, iconic machines from the WRC. And I also spot a VAB Impreza used in the 24-hour Nurburgring challenge. Something that impresses me is just the display that's not only the cars. I'm looking up right now and I see all of their trophies that the company has won. Let's have a look at them. Really, really impressive. A bit high for me to actually see close up, but I see a lot of the trophies won in the WRC rounds. You have the Rally San Remo, also the Nurburgring wins. Huge one over there. Let's see what that one is. I can't see it. It's a huge one. Rally Argentina win. But also in the 1990s, so Mitsubishi Rally Art, managed by MRE, and STI, managed by ProDrive, won a lot of WRC titles. Now, there were two types of titles in the WRC. One was the Drivers' Championship, in which Tommy Mäkinen won for straight 4 times in a row. But during that time, Subaru actually won the Manufacturers' Championship around that same year. And over there, we can see that Manufacturers' winning trophy. That's one from 2003. So the winning car would have been the Blob Eye GDB, which is actually a WRC car. So we're going to have a look. The Manufacturer's Trophy from Network Rally Great Britain. So it says here, the Arizona Test Center in the United States, the Subaru Legacy. That was achieved by the first Subaru Legacy RS. It actually did the high-speed record run as one of STI's achievements as the official tuning and motorsports arm for a car manufacturer. So over here is a very nicely, easy to understand layout timeline. Here, 1988 was when Subaru Technica International was founded. And you see here in 1989, the first Subaru Legacy car that achieved the also what is known as the long distance, so 100,000 kilometers consecutive drive, and also the high-speed record. That was the beginning of their achievements as a tuning manufacturer. Following that, they entered the Legacy RS into the World Rally Championship, and the rest, as many fans of Subaru will know, the GC8 won Manufacturers Championship, and you can see here all of these 132 scale cars all lined up. This is interesting. The model displays come all the way up to 2018. 2019, probably they still haven't found any of the models yet, or maybe there was no particular winning car, but they've already prepared space for all the way up to 2028. So this is Ryuichiro Kuze, the founder of STI, and here we have a display which you can read. It's also in English, and this explains about the story of how he was pursuing the dream for Subaru in motorsports. So the original Subaru Legacy RS won a very prestigious award participating in the Arizona Salt Lake Challenge, which was quite formidable. 100,000 kilometers consecutively and an average top speed of about 226 kilometers, which was quite a feat for especially a Japanese car in the 1980s. So from that award and that technology, they decided to enter the WRC under the Group A regulations. This time, 4-wheel drive, turbocharged 2 liters under the Group A regulations. And that winning car, which was made famous by the late and great WRC car driver Colin McRae with his co-driver Derek Ringer. And here you can see the dark blue livery of the 555 cigarette sponsorship of the Subaru rally car. This livery would later go on and change into a much lighter blue, which we'll see later on in their later cars. But let's talk about this for a minute. So the Legacy model was the first modern car for Subaru after their very successful Leone series. So the Legacy RS was a performance version, 240 horsepower from a flat 4 2-liter engine, mated with a full-time 4-wheel drive system. In the late 80s, this was something with very high technology. Now, not forget that Toyota had the Celica GT4, Mitsubishi had the Galant VR4, but for a very small company like Subaru, this was quite a feat. So to prove their technological ability, they entered this into the Group A. So let's have a look at some of the details of the Subaru Legacy RS. Looking at this race car now, you can see inside. So I'm just going to gently ease myself into the seat. Now, of course, getting into a race car with a full roll cage, you have to be very careful. Get your legs out. Okay, so here we are in the cockpit. Now, the first thing that I notice is the ride height of the seat. In a lot of race cars, you'll be set quite a lot lower with your eyes just above the the bottom part of the windscreen. But for rally cars, because you need a lot of visibility to see the rally stages at the tight corners in mountain roads, and while you're kind of like just running and drifting through the stages, you need a good visibility problem, which is also why a sedan or road production model car is very, very good. So the seat position is kind of like almost a normal car, just maybe a couple of centimeters lower, and you're sitting in very snugly, tight bucket seat. There is 3 pedals, a clutch pedal. WRC cars of that generation still kept the H pattern shift gearbox. It was only, sequentials were only later on from 1997, as we've explained in the Corolla race car. But look at this, the interior trim is still from the original car, and you have the wind-up windows, and only the interior is taken off. A lot of the dashboard still maintained, and a lot of variety of buttons to control direct switches to like the fans, the intercooler, and the lights. All these are regulation. Is of course a main kill switch here for cutting the ignition. Interestingly, here you have the indicator stalks replaced by machine holders for the indicators, and looking inside here, the original instrument clusters is replaced by a very iconic stack tachometer and some key buttons. Of course, it's quite hard to reach from the steering wheel, so later cars have it placed on the steering wheel itself. But just interesting to see the evolution of rally and race cars and how they've developed the interior cockpit for drivers, ease of use and comfort as well. On the ceiling, we can see these are roof ventilators. So if you guys ever have a chance to sit in a rally or race car, a good tip, here's how you get yourself out of the car. Hold your hand, put your hand on one hand on the roll cage bar, one hand on the A-pillar, and get your legs out first, both at the same time. Push yourself out so you don't actually destroy or scratch anything in the car. Thank you, Subaru, for letting us sit inside. Another signature Subaru design from the early 80s is the frameless door windows, as you can see here, called a hardtop by the Japanese classification. Now, another design feature of the early legacy is I like how at the rear C-pillar, there's another glass here. Usually it's just full metal, but a lot of visibility you can see maybe from the driver's seat out the back. I really like how there's the glass and there's the emblem legacy, very classy on the back. So this car won the New Zealand Rally, which is mainly a gravel stage. And you can see this very clearly because it has gravel spec tires, and you can see that the thread is very blocky in order to grip on the gravel. The ride height is quite high compared to a road car. You have these huge mud flaps to prevent stones from flying out the back to contain them. Now, the profile of the tires are much larger than on road tires to absorb the impact from uneven ground, smaller wheels, and still the brakes are AP Racing 4 pots, 2-piece calipers. Now, rally cars still have to maintain road car regulations, so they're mainly original 5 lug nuts or 4 lug nuts or whatever. The difference in wheels of rally cars and race cars are rally cars need more rigidity and strength rather than lightweightness. So a lot of the designs of wheels are much more stubbier and blockier compared to lightweight circuit racing cars, so they have to take a lot of impact. So you'll see this. For the tarmac stages, the wheel designs are quite different. Subaru EJ20 Turbo is quite different from a lot of turbocharged cars because of the layout of the flat boxer engine. The intercooler is placed on top. So on the first version model, you can see how small the intercooler air intake is. Looking inside, you can see an intercooler, but where are the radiator core fins? The first version, Legacy RS, didn't have an air-to-air intercooler. It was actually a water-to-air intercooler, very much like the Celica GT4. So it didn't need a very large air intake opening. It's just enough to cool down a little bit of the air. Later, Imprezas then switched to an air-to-air intercooler. Next model after the Legacy RS in 1994, Subaru moved on to their new model. At that time was the first generation Impreza. So the WRX model, as you see here, with the same dark blue livery 555, still driven by Colin McRae, started the small car into the Group A. So a little bit about Group A. Manufacturers had to produce 2,500 copies as regulated by the FIA for homologation into competition. So basically they transplanted the drivetrain and engine from the legacy RS into a smaller and lighter Impreza model. So the Impreza 555, as it was called, renamed the STI later on, was a much better package for the tight, twisty roads of the WRC. Mitsubishi at that time also fielded the next generation Lancer CD9A, but that car was more of a Group A. It's closer to what the Subaru is. The reason is 555 rally car wasn't actually based on the first STI. It was based largely on the European Impreza turbo model, but also the closest WRX, which only had 220 horsepower, and that was homologated, as you can see here, from the original homologation file. So let's have a look at close details of this GC8. So very similar to the legacy RS, the interior was stripped out, but it still retained all of the road cars, safety regulations, 5-speed gearbox, H pattern, was a little increase in power. Group A regulations stipulated that the car could have a lot of torque, but was limited to about 300 horsepower by means of a restrictor on the compressor side of the turbocharger. Here is the San Remo winner from 1996, and you can see here displayed, all cleaned up, all restored, also a gravel spec, very similar to the legacy RS, and the clean original lines of the GC8 4-door. And we're going to take a look at the next model after that, which was not a Group A model anymore. So let's go over there. It's sitting right there. All right, so you Subaru fans who love old WRC, these two models right here are the iconic, maybe even fanboy cars. Now, this is also my favorite WRC model, the 97 spec WR car. Now, at that time, the regulations were introduced by FIA that manufacturers didn't have to make the 2,500 homologation models anymore. They could use the base model and put different parts and an engine in it to create a new regulation WRC car. This 1997 Subaru WR car is the correct name. It was co-designed by Peter Stevens of ProDrive, which is a British motorsports company working together with Subaru and STI to field cars into competition. The beautiful fenders on the rear and the front, the two-door coupe, which was based on a simple two-door coupe, not the WRX model, because one didn't exist pre-1997. There was a Type R in Japan. This car wasn't based on that. So for 1997, they had a ProDrive design bumper, which would be very, very iconic for future cars, which we'll have a look at it later on. So the blue color changed to a lighter shade, and the 555 logo was also changed. This is very iconic, but being in the new regulations of the WR car meant that other things like the engine and the drivetrain could be rearranged. So starting from this model, the engine center of gravity was actually lowered, and with how they did this, where they redesigned the manifolds, and there was a dry sump, and so they could place the engine a lot lower. Now the fact of the matter is, the Subaru engine may be a boxer, but the center of gravity in the road car isn't really as low as maybe what marketing material stipulates it to be. But so there was a lot of advantage for having a lower center of gravity in this WR car. So let's have a look at the specs. Still, short stroke EJ20 2-liter, giving 300 horsepower by limit of the restrictor, but look at the torque, 48.0 kgf for the first time using an electronic controlled semi-automatic sequential 6-speed gearbox. And we can see inside now. Of course, the earlier version had still the H pattern shifter here, a much more modern version of the dashboard, more carbon fiber, and for the first time, I don't know if you guys can see this, the dashboard was changed to a digital display, buttons and more neatly laid out switches. Even the handbrake is made of carbon fiber, amazing. And behind you can see the cutouts for the helmet holders for the co-driver and the driver, and this is how a proper harness should be mounted onto the roll cage and not onto the back of the seat. Very beautifully done. Even the roll cage is painted in the body color here, as you can see. A newer design, ventilators up here. Still, I can see the driving position is a bit high, much like in a road car, not too low. But this car is actually a tarmac spec. Let's have a look outside. So the rear wing is also a different design from the road model. The wing shape is optimized for maximum airflow, and this part here, the wicker, is thicker, and all these dimensions are WRC FIA regulations, which change year to year. So the evolution of small little parts as allowed by regulations were allowed through different generations. So let's have a look at the beautiful body lines of this WR car. Tarmac spec 18-inch wheels, 225, and almost semi-slick with grooves. And you can see this is where the classic design and gold color comes from on the road cars. Huge AP Racing 4-port brakes. Now, being on the tarmac stage is very similar to the circuit conditions, so the specs of the suspension and the brakes very much resembling something of a circuit spec. Fog light covers were used in some stages, especially on night stages, so these could be removed. And you see these 4 holes here. What they would do is they would just screw or bolt on huge rally fog lights, and you can even see holes in the bonnet over here. These are for mounting additional huge bonnet fog lights. The bonnet scoop is closed off because the intercooler was now moved to the front at an angle. Now remember I said the engine was much slower, so they could move into a front mount intercooler, which of course is better for cooling and more power of the turbocharger. Actually, you can see the turbocharger, the intercooler. So the black bit is the intercooler. That silver thing behind is the radiator. And this small thing is probably part of the transmission oil cooler. Looking through the gaps, I'm not sure if you can see whether the engine is mounted quite a bit lower than the standard road model. So something's very interesting. The hood scoop is non-functional because it has a cover blocking off the intercoolers in front. So obviously this means that it will create more drag onto the bonnet, but I suppose Subaru wanted to maintain the road car relationship image, so they just kept that hood scoop on here despite it not being in use. Okay guys, so you Subaru fans who love the WRC and also the STI, and maybe the most iconic or the most valuable Subaru of all is this 2-door coupe called the 22B STI. So now here we have the 2006 GDB based WRC car. Now, as you can see, from this generation almost, the width was increased to 1,800 millimeters, much wider than the older regulations. Now, another interesting thing about Peter Solberg's last WRC champion car is the large amount of air escape vents. Looking inside here, you can see the intercooler, which is placed almost flat. And again, the air scoop is non-functional. In fact, this time it's completely blocked off because the intercooler sits in front. Now, having a closer look at the front grille, everything's all blocked off. Obviously, if you block off this area, it's better for increased airflow. All the air goes into the lower part here, and it's interesting to see how there's double guide. So this upper guide goes into the intercooler, and this lower one goes into the radiator, which is actually a V-split, and very low front splitters, which is flat. It's not actually curved out like that. And then going all the way to the back on the Hawkeye version GDB, this is also on the road car. It's a roof aero wing, which supplements this enormous and almost kind of Star Wars design rear wing. Look at all these different slats, just direct airflow. Of interest is the wicker design, which directs air upwards, almost vertical. So these two surfaces up here to create huge amounts of downforce. There's all this dry carbon fiber, just fantastic. Really interesting how the evolution of aerodynamics in a WRC car, it kind of just gets more and more almost ridiculous looking. And so one of the other points of the WRC cars of this generation is Well, can you see how much further back the rear wing is in relation to the road car? It's almost kind of like sticking out towards here. Whereas it's interesting to see that the Mitsubishi Lancer rally car of the same generation actually had this one further closer to the rear glass. So just different thinkings of aerodynamics. Very, very interesting. So let's have a look inside the 2006 World Rally car. I'm going to try to kind of get in same way. Oh, immediately I can see how I'm sitting much, much lower than the previous cars. This is almost like a racing car. Maybe I'm just too short, but I can hardly see above the steering wheel. I'm sat so low that there is a platform to raise my legs and floor-mounted pedals like this. There's still a clutch for first gear. And you can actually move these pedals backwards and forwards according to the different drivers. And the dashboard, as you can see, is much more Spartan. It doesn't really resemble the road car, just the general shape and the placement of the buttons. Evolution of the race car, rally car interior just changes. Sitting inside this car, I've noticed something, that the pedal shift is only operated with the right hand. So obviously in rallies where there is a lot more turning of the steering wheel, the driver needs to keep his left hand in control and the right hand controls the gear shift, upshift by pulling and pushing to downshift. And the other hand can also control the handbrake for that tight hairpin, as you can see in this video. Now, interestingly, also the co-driver, who not only gives notes but also assists the driver in controls of the car. From this age, it's using a LCD screen as you down below, and he can use his foot to press either the horn, the wipers, and the reset button over there on this little nice carbon fiber tub. Another point that I'm noticing is the design of the roll cage, resembling very much like a spider web. You can see this cross bracing here and in many other different points as well. For increased rigidity, there's a huge crossbar right in the center. Kind of hard to reach for the helmets, but maybe that's not really necessary. Even the door panels, they were allowed to change to lightweight carbon fiber here, retaining only the door handles of the original car. Now, sadly, Subaru had to exit the WRC in 2008 due to poor performance in the competition, and also their rival Mitsubishi quitted the WRC a couple of years earlier. So this was the final official WRC car, the 2008, based on the GRB 5-door hatchback. And so let's have a look at this. More of the same, but this time, because the intercooler from the previous car was mounted in front, as you can see here, there's no more bonnet scoop. So maybe they probably realized, okay, just do away with it and direct all the air underneath. So let's have a look. It's pretty much the same, but a lot cleaner. Now I'm seeing this little gap here on the front grille. That's probably going into the air intake. And down below, again, you have these split intakes. Probably this is for the intercooler, and this is also for the radiator. But a little cleaner design on the side, still at the same 1,800 millimeter width. But one thing that has changed is the amount of torque, this time at 650 Newton meters, up from the 588 Newton meters from the previous car. Now, having a hatchback design means that the roof line is a lot longer, better advantage for higher speeds. But looking here at the rear wing, made of, wow, really beautifully crafted carbon fiber. In fact, I see many different pieces kind of like pieced together. So it's just sort of stuck on to the hatch. Kind of looks a bit like the Mugen FN2 Civic Type R, but the 5-door Impreza hatchback, being a lot longer, has a better airflow from the top, so the downforce created by this wing was probably enough to supplement the rest of the aerodynamics of the body. So let's have a look inside. So let's try and get in the GRB based car. Oh dear. All right. Righty. More of the same. You still have the single-sided pedal shift, which seems to be better and smoother in operation. But this time they've located the side brake a lot closer for quicker response when you're on the rally stage. So I can imagine just going down on San Remo, coming up to a hairpin brake, downshift, reach here, pull the handbrake, turn the car. That's just so easy
Of course, it's not easy because I'm not a WRC driver, you know. Now, looking inside, you have a more simplified layout of all the controls. This time, it's just little switches, and it's cleaned up over the previous model. And even looking at the co-driver's controls here, and you can see here a sample of the display that can be seen. I suppose putting it in that position also blocks out any reflection from the sun. Maybe because of the cost down, they've only used the carbon fiber for the foot plate, and the rest of it is just from the bare metal of the car. And more of the same, looking at this complicated roll cage with so many tubings that it would probably rival a little small building, but fantastic. By that age, the regulations for racing bucket seats needed to have these side bolsters to protect the driver from side to side in case of impact. The view out of this car is just perfect. It's more like a race car, you know, very, very low. The 2006 version, I could hardly see over the bonnet line, but maybe it's just because of the different interior shape of the GRB model. Oh, this one's gonna be hard. All right, ow! One hand push up. Okay. Oh, it's gonna eat me up. Help. So Subaru as a manufacturer, together with STI, stopped participating in the WRC in 2008. From thereafter, they concentrated their efforts in tuning the road cars and participated in the Nurburgring for the 24 hours endurance race. So that probably explains why their later models after that became a bit more, perhaps a bit more comfort-oriented and more road performance-oriented. As we can see also from the latest VAB model, it's very refined, and a lot of the feedback is taken from the Nurburgring. So let's just talk a little bit what the Nurburgring is. Now, the Nurburgring is a road course located in the city of Nuremberg in Germany. It is a 20.832 kilometer course, which actually is called the Nordschleife. Now, this is the old track. It goes all the way back pre-World War, and its nickname is called the Green Hell. Now, why? And you can see from the layout here, all these different corners. Those of you who play Gran Turismo will see how hard this track is. It's used as a testing bed for sports cars and many car manufacturers. They do speed records, for example, like Porsche and Nissan GTR. They try to get the highest speed records. Honda even tried to get the world's fastest FF time, which they did. So, but Subaru is no stranger to using the Nürburgring as a test course. The course has all different kinds of elevation, undulations, different road surfaces. Some are slippery, some have grip. It represents maybe the most extreme road driving conditions for a road car. Therefore, tuning the car there for the suspension, the gear ratios, the body rigidity, and just the whole of the car's dynamics really improves the car's engineering level to a higher degree, which contributes to maybe the development of refinement, especially of sports cars, but also for luxury cars. So Subaru has participated in the 24-hour Nürburgring race, which is also part of the Le Mans series. So there is a section where they have a sort of homologated road models, which are very close to the production models, something like Group N. Other car manufacturers also participate in this, but Subaru's really put a lot of effort ever since they left the WRC into this, and with a lot of good results, which you're going to see in the cars below. So look at this course here. It is massive, 20 kilometers, and if they could get something in the old days below 8 minutes, now the record probably these days is like maybe a little bit over 7 minutes. So here is one of their 24-hour Nürburgring race winning cars. It's the VAB NBR, which stands for the Nürburgring Challenge car. It was the second time they won, and this is the 2016 version that won the SP3T class. And it's right here looking as it is as it left the race, and you can see from the front all of the battle damage from rigorous 24 hours of racing, bugs and paint damage. I think they've just pretty much left it as it is, as it came out from the race. Now, this is very interesting because it is based on the road car, but regulations allow them to change the aerodynamics, and you can see massive gaps and vents in the bumper. And I'm looking here and I'm seeing maybe that's the regular opening for the hood scoop, and you can see very clearly the intercooler inside. But interesting how they have a carbon fiber guide plate which is different from the road model, and of course NACA ducts to go probably into the air filter right here. NACA duct shape is used in a lot of cars, for example the Lancer Evolution, on some bikes, and also on the R35 GTR. So a very contemporary shape to use in air intakes, and these big vents here to take out all the air. Just interesting to see how these gaps, vents have grown as years pass by. Also in the fender here, you can see it's squared off to make airflow coming from the front diffuser all the way up here, and also another NACA duct probably to guide into, let's see where this leads to. Probably very likely to some oil cooler or something. It's going behind the brakes, of course. On the road car, on the latest, the final VAV model, you can see some of these changes reflected, which really shows how motorsports feedback does actually go into your road cars. So you can see how there's still the 5 lug nuts from the road car. It's not a single lug nut like on some GT3 race cars. And coming around to the back, you see these holes here. This is for the fuel tank, and you can see inside a carbon fiber fuel tank placed right in the middle of the car for weight, and another vent here for probably the cooling of the fuel tank. So it's a 24-hour race car. The capacity of the fuel tank, of course, is allowed to be increased, and huge GT wing. As the years go by in race car development, the rear wing actually moves further and further back onto the back of the car. It's no longer mounted on the trunk lid, but it's actually extended all the way outside. Now, a further development of the GT wing is the swan neck type, stays on top, but this is a 2016 model, so very, very huge. You can see probably a lot of downforce, which I can imagine because the Nurburgring has some really treacherous road conditions, and some parts, in high-speed turns, you need as much downforce as possible. But it's very well balanced with the front, as we can see, the huge splitters. So these incremental changes year by year do get fed back into the road cars very, very much. And wow, just look at this huge diffuser. A point to take is that it's protruding a lot out from the body compared to cars before made of dry carbon fiber, and you can also see how the extensions come up from the fender all the way here. Probably something about having that airflow coming in from between the tire and that fender extension gap. And all these small things do contribute somehow to aerodynamics. So looking inside this race car, and it's very, very Spartan, as you would expect in a race car, no carpets. But look at the center console. There are a lot less buttons, as you'll see, compared to other race cars. Only the most important functions for switches are placed there. Obviously, the emergency kill switch, the ignition switch, and display toggle mode for the display on the dash, and hazard lights. Very, very minimal. A lot of these are regulated in the race. You see here the map layout of the Nurburgring circuit, probably to explain between the manager and the driver which corners of the circuit, because there's so many of them. If there's like any accidents or trouble, and maybe they just need a quick reference, they can have a look. I suppose driving at like over 180 kilometers an hour, they probably have no time to look at that. But anyway, it's interesting to see these little things inside real race cars, and you kind of wonder what they're for. Bonnet at the top, as you can see here, is a flexible strut tower bar. Now, a lot of you may think strut tower bars should be as stiff as possible. It should be one solid bar. But this is actually a flexible type where the center lock nut here adjusts the tension on the bar. Now, this is done so that engineers can have more flexibility in adjusting chassis dynamics. So you can adjust, of course, the suspension, but also adjusting the body rigidity according to the strut tower bar stiffness can actually contribute in setting up the car. Because the car body, in modern cars, they're really very stiff on the floor. So another way they can adjust this is by adjusting this strut towers from the top. It's very interesting how it's exposed on the top, and so engineers can make very, very quick changes on the fly as it comes in the pit. Really interesting. Great display here of the boxer engine, and I believe this is actually from the racing engine. Let's have a look. So here we have the cylinder head, and the boxer engine, of course, is split into two. So you have the polished intake and exhaust ports down here, and look at the pistons and the reinforced con rods, and you can see the piston skirt coated with molybdenum and with very small valve cutouts, very, very shallow, lightweight pistons, and the crankshaft con rod bearings. And interestingly, you can see how short the 2-liter opposed engine is. Crankshaft throws are very, very thin compared to a conventional inline 4, and the camshafts situated on top here. So basically, because it is very much like a 180-degree V, has twice the amount their parts of compared to a normal inline 4. The engine itself is actually a bit heavier than an inline 4, but certain advantages of a flat 4, very much seen, of course, in the racing engines, which they can put the engine in a much lower center of gravity, which we're going to have a look at this next display over here. This is a display of the Super GT GT300 class car. So it's got 300 horsepower, but looking at this, very, very different from the road car. So here we have a very clear view of a small racing carbon triple clutch sensor, and you have a different intake manifolds, and you can see just the width of the boxer engine. They can sit much lower. Now the road cars have a really thick and deep oil pan, which doesn't allow it to sit as low. The exhaust manifold comes under and snakes under the oil pan. On the race car, they could have the exhaust manifolds going to the front. Now, this is interesting because the traditional location of the road car turbo is not in front here, but it's actually behind here. So on this race car, it's very interesting design because the engine is situated as far back in the chassis as possible. You have the turbocharger in front with the front mount intercooler mounted at an angle. So in the GT car, the aerodynamics allow all of the air to go into the radiator and also the intercooler. And this is perhaps the ideal setup using a boxer engine. Cutout of this engine, the reinforced crankshaft and the pistons with the engravings STI on the con rods. Fantastic. You have the carbon fiber covers here. Really interesting, rare look at the racing engine. So we're here with the advertising manager of the STI Gallery. Nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Welcome to STI.
Yes.
My name is Kumi. I'm an advertising manager. Anything about STI motorsports and products.
Kumi-san, could you tell us when did this STI Gallery started?
10年前にこちらの STI ギャラリーはオープンしまして、昨年ですね、リニューアルを行いまして、あちらの半分のコーナーでは、過去の勝利のトロフィーを展示したり、過去の戦歴のあるこのラリーカーですとか、ニュルブークリンク24時間レースの車を展示しまして、皆さんお客様に乗っていただけるようにこの勝利を一緒に分かち合おうというところで作りました。でこちら半分はですね、特別展示ということで、期間によってちょっと内容を変えていくんですけれども、今回初めてのところは STI 創立から10周年の、初代久世社長からいろいろな、温かい言葉をいただいてるんですけれども、そちらをメインとした黎明期ということで最初の10年間を表しています。
Thank you. Do you have a message for foreign visitors and fans of Subaru and STI?
はい、ですね、私たちのギャラリーでは過去のとても人気のある 22B を展示したりですとか、ラリーのいろいろな車を展示してまして、皆さん実際にお乗りいただくこともできますし、またトロフィーを手に持って記念撮影なんかもできますので、ぜひお越しください。よろしくお願いします。
Thank you so much for this short interview. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank
and
you.
I will hope that many visitors can come here. So
Yes.
thank you very much, Kumi-san.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
So guys, that was a quick overview and a look at all of the race cars and rally cars in the STI Mitaka Gallery in Tokyo. Now, it's a fantastic place if you are an automotive fan, a car fan, a Subaru fan, STI fan, take the train from Shinjuku, come over here and spend a whole day. They've got a nice library of all kinds of books, very much like the Toyota MegaWeb, but all of just Subaru information. Even in English, there's a lot of rally books down here. You can come here, sit in the car, have some coffee, and it's just a fantastic museum that's not too far away from Tokyo. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll hope to bring you more stuff. So for now, that's all from us. Peace out.